Hello. Welcome to the Jaybefaunt channel. My name is James Fauntleroy. I am your host, as always. The Jaybefaunt channel is available on all major podcast platforms like Anchor, Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts, so you can subscribe to me there. I'm also part of the Revolutionary Blackout Network, so you can find me on the JB Show on Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also on RBN Live on Tuesdays at 4 and the Sabby and JB Show on Thursdays at 6. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, please make sure to smash down the subscribe button and click the notification bell to be notified whenever new content is available. Also, a shout out to my patrons on Patreon, as well as on Coffee, and some of the members that we have as well on the channel. I want to thank you for your contributions and basically trusting me and being willing to take a chance on somebody like myself. Without you, I would not have this channel, so I deeply appreciate it. Just to let you guys know, look, we're back. Dirty Truths, Michael Parenti. We're doing chapter 2, part 7. This is the last part in chapter 2, Dirty Truths by Michael Parenti. As previously shown to you guys, there was a talk about the corporate media regarding climate change, regarding weather reporting. And so we're going to be talking about basically, continuing this conversation about corporate media. So this is actually going to be interesting, especially, from someone like me that's now in the independent media space. So this is a really good topic to cover, especially since we're in October. We're in the midterms. We're in a midterm election year. Elections are coming up, this November. And so a lot of people are going to be seeing an intensifying of political ads, especially this month in October. So just goes to show the strength of corporate media. And so this is going to be a very interesting article to get into. And I can't wait to really discuss this, and I'll be discussing it throughout. This is also a very short episode. This is why you're getting a second episode so close before the next week, because I really want to cover this. And, this is also a really good one. So let's start. And, oh, yeah, I got a tea. Let's begin. All right. This is on page 146 of 32s by Michael Parenti. So, some call it censorship. Hang on, make sure I do that right. Some call it censorship. Okay. All right. Ready? All right. Our free and independent news media are actually controlled by publishers and network bosses who see to it that their own preferred views prevail. They refuse to run letters, guests, columns, and occasionally even their regularly syndicated features and comic strips if the material does not suit their political proclivities. They punish editors and journalists by passing them over for promotion, transferring them to remote posts, and even firing them if they don't learn soon enough what is and is not ideologically fit to print or broadcast. Such actions should be exposed for what they are: censorship. But news organizations are the last to publicize their own transgressions. Instances of censorship are simply not treated as newsworthy. The hardest kind of censorship to detect are the preemptive forms. In the profession that is literally awash with right-wing pundits, there are few, if any, progressives who appear regularly as TV commentators or as nationally syndicated columnists in the major dailies. The left does not have to be censored. It is excluded from the start. It does not have to be reined in. It is never even put into harness. Here I would like to recount two incidents of media suppression drawn from my own experience. These events hardly exhaust my encounters with political censorship, but they illustrate a kind of suppression that is seldom publicized. Overruled. Some years ago, when I lived in Washington, D.C., an acquaintance urged me to call upon the editor of City Paper and suggest to him that I write a weekly column for his publication. It seemed worth a try. City Paper is a handout alternative weekly that affects a kind of village voice stylistic and cultural liberalism. It treats various taboo subjects with more candid detail than would be allowed in the mainstream media, and it offers, or used to offer in those days, an official liberal McCracking article. It claims a readership of 50,000 and is picked up by a lot of people, both in local government and on Capitol Hill. The editor greeted me warmly in his office, professing to be an admirer of my writing. He responded most positively to my offer to do a column. He was delightedly surprised that someone with my credentials would be willing to become a regular contributor for a local publication like City Paper. Would I consider doing media watchdog column, one that could eventually be syndicated in other alternative weeklies? I said yes. He would call me within a week with the final go ahead. 3 weeks later, having not heard from him, I telephoned his office. He sounded like a different person. Whereas before he had been ebullient and enthusiastic, now he spoke in a flat, dismissive tone, only saying, no, we're not going to do it. No explanation, no regrets. The conversation went no further. He abruptly hung up. Later on, I found out from someone who used to write for City Paper that he had been overruled by his publishers. Cookie, Kevin, and Michael? The second incident involves a national media organization. In February 1990, I received a telephone call from the senior editor of National Public Radio's Morning Edition, NPR. She said words close to these, quote, we have been thinking of broadening our range of commentary on Morning Edition, and your name keeps coming up. Would you be interested in becoming one of our regular commentators along with Cookie Roberts and Kevin Phillips? She went on to tell me that along with the commentaries, I might expect to participate in an occasional weekend retreat with Kevin and Cookie and a few of the senior staff to exchange ideas and impressions. A whole weekend listening to Cookie Roberts do her spin analysis was my idea of purgatory. Still, I said okay. The editor said she would get back to me soon. Friends asked me why I wasn't more enthusiastic about pending offer from NPR. I replied, because it will never happen. Our free and independent media can harbor all sorts of conservative and reactionary pundits, but would never have a progressive like myself as a regular commentator. Indeed, the Morning Edition senior editor never got back to me. I later learned she was no longer at that post. 7 months later, I received another call from another senior editor of Morning Edition. We haven't forgotten about you, she said. As I asked she asked if I had something they could use as a commentary. There were no further mention of weekend retreats or becoming a regular third member of the Cookie Kevin team. I suggested a short commentary drawn from an article I had just written on the U.S. armed assault against Iraq, entitled Bush's splendid little war. I sent the script, maximum allowed length of 400 words, to her. After a few changes by her, we taped it at the NPR studio. Cancelled. My commentary was hardly a class analysis of imperialism, but it did make some pointed criticisms of Bush's intervention in the Gulf region, of a kind I had not heard on NPR or any other mainstream outlet. I noted that the president had a taste for splendid little wars, that the invasion of Panama had brought the dire results for the Panamanians, and that an attack against Iraq, the fighting had not yet begun, would be disastrous for the Iraqi people. I said, quote, one wonders what this military venture is all about. Saddam Hussein is not a Sandinista, a Castro, a Gaddafi, nor even a Noriega. By that I mean he doesn't have the leftist or populist leanings. He doesn't advocate he doesn't advocate the kind of economic equality that rich conservatives like Bush find so loathsome. Hussein is a right-wing dictator who, like other such autocrats, has received U.S. aid. So why is Bush now coming down so hard on him? End quote. I stated that the intervention had a self-serving purpose for the president. It distracted the public from the sagging economy and the savings and loans scandal. It secured oil profits for the big corporations. It bolstered the case for military spending and boosted Bush's opinion poll ratings. The editor was pleased with the taping and told me that it would run the next morning. As I left, she asked if I had anything else I would like to do. I mentioned an idea about the Supreme Court, and she indicated a desire to start on it in the next few days. The following morning, I listened to NPR's Morning Edition, but I did not hear my commentary. Later, I called the senior editor. She told me that the executive producer, Bob Parenti, had listened to my tape and had canceled it because, as he put it, quote, I am not hearing anything new, end quote. Nothing new? What previous Morning Edition commentary had touched on Bush's hidden agenda in the Gulf War, especially his dedication as a wealthy conservative to economic inequality and oil profits? No, I said to her. Your boss vetoed that tape because there was something new in it. She responded, I only work here. She added that she wouldn't mind having me try another commentary, but she feared it might again be canceled, and that would be a waste of my time. So I ended my career with National Public Radio. There were questions I could have asked the editor, such as, is it a regular practice to have the executive producer exert prior censorship over the commentaries? Had he killed any other contributors? If so, how many? Whose? And for what reasons? Did he ever cancel one that seemed too conservative? Did he really hear something new in every Kevin and Cookie commentary? Had he run numerous commentaries that offered the same old predictable notions, the same perspective, and familiar information? If the above incidents tell us anything, it is that editors and reporters are not as free as and independent to invite a variety of opinions as they might think. They are free to say what they like only as long as their bosses like what they say. They are free to produce what they want if their product remains within acceptable political boundaries. You'll have no sensation of a leash around your neck if you sit by the peg. It is only when you stray that you feel the restraining tug. I can draw one I can draw one JB, get it together, read. I can draw one consolation from the above incidents. They support the left's critical analysis of the press as being neither free nor independent, but highly controlled by its corporate owners and their faithful lieutenants. In the stories and commentary they run or refuse to run, and the people they hire or refuse to hire, the mass media demonstrate the accuracy of what we progressive critics say about them. So that is, some call it censorship. So that's the end of chapter 2, by the way. The next one is the JFK. Let's see. Chapter 3 is Conspiracy, Phobia, and Reality. The JFK Assassination, Part 1, Defending the Gangster State. So that's what we're going to be reading next. But one thing that was pointed out by, and Parenti pointed this out earlier in the book, but also Chomsky actually pointed out as well in Manufacturing Consent when he talked about a lot of the people who are journalists, editors, and producers that are within this space of the corporate media space. They're hired because they actually sip the Kool-Aid. They believe the bullshit. They are literally lost in the sauce. And so because of that, that's why they're hired. Because they believe what the State Department tells them. They believe what the Department of Defense tells them. They believe what the executive branch tells them. They believe what the legislative branch tells them. And they offer very little pushback. They believe what the police tell them. They believe what the national and the federal police tell them. Because they already have that corporate mindset. They bought into it already. That's why they get hired. Someone who doesn't buy into it, someone who is very skeptical about it, they're the ones who don't get the jobs. And then anyone who does develop that skepticism, they're immediately fired. It's funny because somebody like Ed Schultz, who was with MSNBC, he wanted to cover the Bernie Sanders campaign. And because he covered the Bernie Sanders campaign, he wanted to cover, guess what? They didn't want to cover it. And they were willing to cover Donald Trump's campaign all the while. But when it came to Bernie Sanders' campaign, they said no. They were like, nah, bump that. Fuck that. We're not going to cover it. Why? Because it ruined the narrative. It gave attention to someone that they didn't want. Even a centrist like Bernie Sanders. And when I say centrist, I mean centrist from the global perspective, not the U.S. perspective, because the U.S., the Overton window is so far to the right, it's not even funny. But from a global perspective, Bernie Sanders is really a centrist. And they wouldn't even want to give him any attention at all. And that is because they don't want any of that narrative to be shown. You got to remember that the media is owned by these major corporations. They get their money from advertising. Who do they get their money from advertising from? They get it from the fossil fuel companies, pharmaceutical companies, finance companies, military industrial complex. So they get it from these companies. And these are the companies that actually dictate what they want the United States to do around the world, as well as domestically. And so because they dictate it, their messengers, the corporate media, have to toe a certain line. They can't tell the truth about what's really going on So therefore, they cannot hire somebody that tells the truth. Because guess what? There's no money in it. So you have a lot of people who would be otherwise great journalists who counter the narrative, and guess what? They don't get hired. This is why you don't see a Max Blumenthal or an Aaron Mate on corporate media, because the moment that they say what they typically say, it would be too out of line. And then advertisers would not want to advertise during their shows, which means that these corporate news media outlets would lose money because they're literally going up against the corporations that literally fund these outlets. Even so much so that they also fund the very platform you're watching me on right now. So this is why people like myself, the Gray Zone, RBN, the Indie News Network, Mikasa Sukasa, a lot of us, we are heavily suppressed because we're not good for the corporate algorithm, because the corporate algorithm demands that they get precedent, because they actually help pay into the system. They actually help create more revenue for platforms like this. And so because they create more money for platforms like this, then they need to protect them, not us, because we actually counter the narrative for the people who actually they make more money off of. So this is the point about corporations and the media, is that look, a Wolf Blitzer literally believes what he says. A John Berman literally believes what he says. Chuck Todd literally believes what he says. You know, a Brian Kilmeade believes what he says. They literally believe it. David Muir believes what he says. A Cookie Roberts believed what she said. A Dan Rather believed what he said because they literally were propagandized, and they continuously believed the narrative, the corporate narrative. And so they're not going to deviate from that. That's why they get the job. That's just why you have a Tucker Carlson with the job, because he believes the bullshit. This is why Rachel Maddow has the position that she has, because she believes the bullshit. This is why Chris Hayes has the job that he has. Or this is why, you know, a Chris Cuomo had the job that he had because he believed the bullshit. This is why Don Lemon has the position that he has, because he believed the bullshit. They believe it. And so corporate media is like, okay, hire these people. They're great. Let's keep them talking. Let's give them the prime time hours so that they can continuously let the people know what we want them to know, not the truth about what we do. So Parenti really also talks about manufacturing consent, not to the extent that Chomsky does, because Chomsky made a whole entire book out of it. But Parenti does agree with Chomsky regarding to how the corporate media manufacturers are consent, and it's quite bad. I mean, look, just think about the Telecommunications Act that was signed by Bill Clinton. You know, I mean, and then uh, the I forgot what it's called, the something doctrine. I forgot, but Um, there has to be that truth in reporting. But now it's just really, people like Tucker and Maddow and many others, they're not really news, they're more entertainment, but they have this veneer as news. And then guess what? People believe them until they have to confess in court that they're not actually news. But the damage is done. How many people are now anti-Russia because of Rachel Maddow? Because they watched her night after night on MSNBC, even though she confessed that she's not really a news personality, she's just an entertainment and opinion person, right? But that narrative of Russia, Russia, Russia bad, that permeated the minds of many people, especially in liberal spaces, and made them think that, oh, Russia is trying to do some nefarious things during the US elections, when in reality, it was the United States that interfered in Russian elections, especially back in the 90s. Yeah, that's right. The United States actually interfered in Russian elections. But nobody wants to talk about that, right? Also, don't mention the coup backed by the United States and Ukraine in 2014. Corporate media, y'all. That money's good. That money's real good. So, but yeah, can't wait to talk about about conspiracy, phobia, and reality. The JFK assassination. Ooh, this is gonna be. It's gonna be deep. It's gonna be deep, 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 deep. I can't wait to get into it. Ha ha! Dirty shoes, Michael Parenti. So, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about the corporate media? You know, have any of you tried to work in corporate media? Like, what have your experiences been? Do you know somebody that tried to work in corporate media? I know that Sabby Sabs, Sabrina Salvati, you know, um, Grandmaster Sabs. I know she also has. She also, I think she went to school for. I don't. I think she may have a degree in broadcast journalism, but she knows a little bit of the ins and outs of it too, and so it's quite interesting to see. So, yeah, let me know your thoughts about this article. I would love to hear it. Thank you so very much to all the patrons on Patreon and Coffee. Thank you so very much from the top and bottom of my heart. And be sure to tune in to my show on as live on per Tuesdays. And I can't wait to see you guys again. And thank you so much for watching. Water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, just make sure to laugh and enjoy life, because life is short. Reading is fundamental. Forehead kisses for you. And reading is fundamental.